All right, so good morning, good
Yes, yeah.
day, good evening, everybody. So warm wishes to wherever you are joining us from. So today I'm here to tell you a story about taking a really lagging organization and then just in the midst of trying to stay relevant, we ended up becoming an agile great place to work. So that's the story I'm going to be sharing with you today. Now, just a little bit before we start, we were very honored that we were actually recognized for this by the World Agility Forum last year with an agile great place to work award. So this talk is really about sharing our journey and how we got there. So before I go into what made us successful, we probably have to start at the beginning. So in the beginning, there were these two companies, JobStreet and JobsDB. So these were the original like Asian, OG tech companies that was born in the late 90s. And these two companies were giants in this space, right? They were pioneers, they were giants in helping tens of millions of people find employment within Southeast Asia and Hong Kong, right? So they're massively huge in the seven countries, Southeast Asia plus Hong Kong. And these are companies which are worth hundreds of millions, or now when it was sold, a billion over dollars. So they were really, really successful in the beginning. Now, what happened was in 2016, actually 2015, these two companies were both acquired by another giant, Seek. For those of you calling from Australia, New Zealand, Seek's a household name if you're looking for employment, right? So Seek basically bought JobStreet, JobsDB, smushed them together, and this was born Seek Asia. Now, with this merger of two competitors came one company, but then the founders basically exited. They took their money and says, thanks for all the fish, thanks for the money, but it's time for us to go enjoy our lives. Here you go. Here's the company. So this company, this new company, had basically essentially a new leadership team. Now, I was part of this new leadership team, and we came in with the goal of really, what do we do with this organization now? Because while this organization was once great, there's new competitors on the market, right? You got LinkedIn, you got Indeed, which is massive. You got Facebook, you got Google. Everyone's coming into the job space. So how do we even stay relevant, right? That was the challenge: is how do we even stay relevant as an organization and not get swallowed up by all these massive competitors? So briefly, I'll share the organization that was in 2016, right? Because it was a merger of two fierce competitors. We had two cultures, two systems, two products, two of everything. Everything was duplicated because these were two companies that now is under one banner. Now, what made it worse was the culture that we had internally, right? We were lucky if we had more than one deployment a month to production, right? Not counting hot fixes and fixes and all that, right? We had one deployment a month with new features. But we have competitors like India and Google, which are releasing every single day. So how do we even keep up with that? The second thing was our customers were basically not happy with us because 25% of our customer issues did not even meet the SLA. Now, it's not to say that this company was always like this. It was in the rush to be acquired. They took some shortcuts. They took some shortcuts to make themselves look good so they can sell at a higher valuation. I mean, I would do that. But what happened was customer satisfaction, the ability to serve a customer started to really erode a little bit. Thirdly, we had high staff turnover. Some of the staff basically took some share options and left. Some didn't like what was happening. You're expecting me to work with a competitor? No, thank you. I'm leaving. I'm going to go somewhere else. And because of that, our aggregated employee engagement score was less than 20%, which is miserable, right? But this was the challenge that was set up for us when we joined. Now, the thing that we had to ask ourselves, right, was, you know, wasn't that we should reorganize or not. Like we know we had to do that. But the question we had to ask ourselves was, how do we reorganize? Now, we could do it the traditional way, right? Traditional project management. We have time, cost, scope planned out, all the activities, trainings, all these different things lined up. And you'll look really good on paper. And we could show the exec team and the board says, hey, this is our plan to reorganize ourselves and transform ourselves into one company. Looks good on paper. But you know what? As an agilist, we know that we don't run projects this way. So why do we run transformations this way? Now I'll share with you a little nugget that was in my mind when I was tasked with this problem. How do we reorganize? So this number was in my mind. 3 out of 4 reorganizations fail. I've been part of reorganizations before. That sounds about right, right? That sounds about right. Now this comes from McKinsey. They did the research. They said it's about 70 odd percent. But I've been part of reorganizations, and most of them are pretty miserable. So I knew what not to do, but I didn't know what to do in that case. So working with the exec team, we said, okay, we haven't done this before, right? And so this was me hired in, and my background is I'm an agile product guy. I've built products my whole life. I'm a technologist. I coach teams. I'm a learner. I'm an experimenter. But one of the things I've not done was a transformation at this size, right? So I don't have change management experience. I don't have transformation experience. But then how do we go about doing it? So the first thing we did was we looked at our values, right? So what are the values that we need to guide our transformation? Well, the first thing we found was, customer over profits. If we make the customer happy, the profits will come. The profits will come. The second thing was we had to be one cohesive organization. We cannot have these two of everything anymore. We need to have one single organization. The third one was we know this is going to be tough. We can't have a plan, but we got to adapt. So we have to constantly inspect and adapt. And lastly, it must be people first, right? People are our most important asset, and I don't say that, superficially. It's because we're in the technology space. If we don't take care of people, they're going to leave, and we're going to be in big trouble. So we have to care about people to be successful. So how do we go about reorganization? So essentially, we came up with 3 things, right? And I'm going to call it, let's reorganize the agile way. The first, and the hat I put on, the lens I put on was, if I'm a product owner building a product, this is how I would do it. So why not I be the product owner or product manager for this organization? And the organization then becomes my product. So if that's the case, then what do? Well, first of all, I have to design the organization, right? And we have to design it with a few attributes in mind, right? First of all, we want it to be customer oriented. The second thing is no big bang deliveries, right? So let's deliver iteratively. And lastly, let's self-organize. TJ, just some help. I think someone's unmuted, so if you can go and mute that person, that'd be great, because I'm hearing background noise. Okay, thank you. So we knew we wanted to start from this platform, right? Like, let's deliver an organization the way we would deliver a product using agile ways. So let's zoom in on each of these directly. So in designing the organization, we were very clear that we wanted to design the organization around the customer, right? The customer had to be the center of everything we do. So one of the things we did was we started with a blank sheet of paper and says, okay, if we were to design this again, this organization, what would it look like? And one of the things that became painfully obvious to us was the way we organize ourselves has to represent the markets that we're serving. So in the job space, there's really only 2 sides to this marketplace, right? You got people looking for jobs, and we call them candidates. You got people employing, the employers, we call them hires. And our job is being in the middle to match these 2 things up, to match candidates with jobs and jobs with candidates. So let's start there, right? So we just drew a big, block and says, okay, all the stuff that we do to serve the candidate, we put in this box. All the stuff we do to serve employers, we put in this box, and we started with 2 big boxes. Of course, there's some other boxes there like data and security and in-house and all that kind of stuff. But we really started with the presence of, how do we organize ourselves to serve our customers? So we end up with basically 2 big boxes, candidate, hires. And then within each one, we knew we have to organize ourselves internally to then serve specific customer needs. So how do we do that? So the first thing that we wanted to do was to understand that we need to treat people first. So what is the basic component of an organization, right? And we said that was going to be a team. That was going to be a team, right? And how we would design a team was we had to design the environment in which the team lives in. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the environment right now. So the one thing we wanted to care about was, what are if the organization is the product, what attributes do we care about? What attributes do we want to avoid? So a desirable attribute, sorry, that's a typo there, is we wanted to have a short line to customer, And my mantra was every single member of a team should know who their customer is. And not just like an abstract customer. Like, do you actually know the customer? Have you met a customer? Have you talked to a customer? And that was the ideal, right? Everyone should know who they're serving. That's the first thing. The second one is, we had two these products that we had to re-engineer. And what we ended up doing was we did something called the reverse Conway maneuver, right? We organized ourselves so that architecture matches the business, right? So that's how we organize it in this way as well. Thirdly, the culture was a little bit hierarchical, so we wanted to flatten it. So we basically said, the hierarchy is you're in a team, you're in a domain, and you go up to the leadership. That's basically 3 levels. Every team then should have a clear outcome. So how we did it was every team had a specific set of customer needs that they served. And lastly, this had to be one org, not brand A, not brand B. You're serving the customer through whichever brand that we're serving in the market. So the undesirable traits was we wanted to speed up decision making. So there was a lot of hierarchy, people asking managers and they were escalating stuff. We said, forget about that, right? Let's flatten that. The second thing is remove duplication of functions. We had to be one org. And lastly, we still have to deal with this us versus them culture, right? Because they were fierce competitors in the beginning. So once we set that up, we said, okay, if the basic unit organization is a team, what does the team look like? And that's on the right side. We just set up a quick little team blueprint, right? One product owner, some engineers, one UXer, one Scrum Master, right? And we want to empower them. We want it to be stable, no pulling people from project to project. And and we want each team to have a really strong mission. Now, one of the things that came out of this was it made it easier to budget. So no longer do we look at headcount to fund projects or fund new initiatives. We look at team as the basic unit organization. You want to build something? You need a team for it. Now we tweaked it a little bit. We have like half team increments, but it made budgeting so much simpler to talk about teams or half teams rather than headcounts or fractions of headcounts. So that was a really, really good thing that simplified a lot of how we did budgeting internally. Now, the next one was, if I've designed an organization, how do I deliver it then? Well, let's just deliver it iteratively, right? Simple as that. One thing we wanted to be conscious of is no big bangs, right? As the Scrum Master for the organization, I set up a backlog for the leaders to work off. What is it that we want to implement? One of the things that we found out really early on was we had way, way, way too much work in progress. Everyone's trying, every leader was trying their own little thing. So I said, you know what, stop it. This is confusing everybody. Let's put it in a backlog. Let's limit the number of changes that we make at one time, right? We also knew we wanted to inspect and adapt. Now, the language that we used internally, it wasn't inspect and adapt. It was how do we learn as quickly as possible, right? That was really the goal of inspect and adapt, is learning as quickly as possible. And then lastly was really to develop the capability, well, first the appetite and the capability as an organization for change, because there was a lot of resistance in the beginning. So we just did it quarter by quarter, right? It's a long sprint, I know, but that was our sprint, right? Every quarter, what is the thing that we're aiming for? What is the changes that we're doing? How did that work out? Did we have to make any adjustments? And across about, I would say, 18 months, 6 quarters, we've basically done all these things that you see at the bottom, right? And there's probably more stuff in there. But the key point, the takeaway was what enabled us to do all those things in a structured way was we just thought of it as delivering iteratively and constantly inspecting and adapting. Now, the last thing was we self-organize. So again, the culture had to change, right? Because we had 2 different cultures and we knew that we didn't want neither of those cultures. So we had to be a new culture. But the question was how? And this was where, I was reading around self-organization and I said, you know what? First thing, let's just do self-organization, right? Let team members choose their teams. Now I know other companies have done it, right? So this was about 2016, 2017. So other companies have done it. This is not rocket science, right? And there's a lot of good material out there about how to do this. But the thing that really helped us was through self-organization, we basically empowered every single member in the organization to shape the culture as they see fit, right? And that was a huge one for us because we wanted to break the old molds, the old beliefs, the old values of how to do things. We wanted to break all of that. And the way that allowed us to do that was to let people choose, empower them to choose to shape the culture as they see fit. right? And that really, really accelerated our ability to adapt and change, right? And how this was see, as a leader, I would have people coming up to me after a while say, hey, you know what? There's a problem in my team. There's a problem over here. I'm thinking this is something we could do. I'm like, great, go do it. What do you need? Tell me, I'll support you. Go do it. And because we enabled others at every layer of the organization to take the initiative, things happen so much faster and in the right direction, right? So that was a really powerful lesson for us is self-organization really does allow an organization to change really quickly. So this sounds all great, right? But I can tell you, man, I was in a pit of despair for the last part of a year. We had issues left, right, center, right? Anything from these two teams not working together, or legacy software that wasn't supported, or even mediocre things. Like we were introducing MacBooks, for instance, and someone will come to me and say, why does this team get a MacBook and I don't get a MacBook, right? So as leaders, we committed that no issue is too small for us to resolve, right? And that was good because again, it was a flattening organization, but that means I had a lot of issues on my plate, as we did every other leader. So I was kind of rough there for a moment. I was thinking about giving up, and I wasn't the only one that felt this way. And the thought that I had was, as servant leader, I'm helping everybody else, but who's helping me? And this is kind of what I really learned about myself in that role is change doesn't come alone. Like I can't be the only one, or it can't be a small team holding this up. Everyone has to play a part in it. So I basically then formed a support group, a leadership support group. We met every week and we basically supported each other. We vent, we complain, we solve each other's problems. And that's really start like the leadership team started to gel together and actually like function as one team. So the reason why they didn't do that before was we hired a bunch of new execs and new, senior leaders in, and then everybody had an agenda. But after a while, that agenda had to be a shared agenda. The second thing that I learned there was coaching as a leadership style. I started, instead of solving problems, I would coach people who came to me with problems and they would then solve the problems themselves. That became so much more scalable in order to help an organization really learn and grow. Right. So that's kind of the lessons I learned being in that pit. Now, the other thing that came up for us was we just had to create lots and lots of feedback loops, right? So if you think about a product, how do we get an ailing product better? Is feedback, customer feedback. So we created feedback loops with our customers, with our staff, with our business stakeholders, feedback everywhere, right? And we use tools like Office Vibe for continuous HR engagement surveys. We use customer research surveys. We do AMAs, we do check-ins, we do showcases, we do all of that, right? But the key part here was the feedback. And the more feedback we got, and when we acted on that feedback, that built trust with the organization, that built trust with the people, and actually helped them be empowered that whatever we're doing is real, right? And that really helped us overcome a lot of skepticism that was there in the beginning, right? And that was just through creating an environment for feedback, listening to people, and then responding to that feedback. So 18 months later, organization reborn, right? And why I say 18 months for us, it was the point where we felt it reached a tipping point, right? That if we step away as leaders, it will still continue. So that was a great place to be. And how we could see that was employees were doing things for themselves, right? That they were no longer reliant on people to make decisions or to do things for them as leaders, right? So that felt really great that, if we were to step back, this thing will continue. Second thing, engagement was steadily going up, right? Empowerment, teams were making decisions. Instead of saying, hey, boss, what should I do? They'll go, hey, Z, this is what I've done. Just want to let you know, and if you have any thoughts, share it with me. I'm like, great, go do it, right? You don't have to involve me, just go run with it. And how we could do that was we created an environment of just lots of transparency and lots of feedback so that if there needs to be any correction, someone will basically speak up and we'll adjust. And the amazing thing when I'm looking back, right, when I was doing a debrief with some of the execs there was this took us 18 months. This took us a lot shorter than we thought, actually. We thought it would be 2 to 3 years, but we got it done 18 months. And a lot of that was based on the values and the way we did it, just, agile ways of working. So this is what then became, right? So we have one organization, one system, single culture. From that one deployment a month, now we have thousands of deployments in production. Our turnover cut was reduced by half. Mean time to resolution, 95% and up by the time I left. Now, It should still be much, much higher, but it was still a great improvement from what it did. And the thing that I'm especially proud of was our employee engagement was beyond 70%, right? That was the number that I was owning, was engagement. And because of that, the story, we were recognized by the World Agility Forum for the work that we did there. Now, to wrap it up, I just want to share with you 3 key learnings. So the learning ones was to put on the lens that the organization is the product. So that's how I operate it, right? That's my product. How can I grow my product, take care of my product? So the organization is my product. The second one is when in doubt, just let the agile values and principles guide our actions. Many, many times I lean back on the manifesto of how to deal with difficult situations. What should I do in this case? Let's go back to the values and the principles. Let's start there. The third one, constantly inspect and adapt, right? The organization wants to change, inspect and adapting guides that change, right? So generate lots of feedback, lots of data, do something with the data, do something with feedback and adjust accordingly. And lastly, I'll share with you a bonus one. And this is what I learned after everything had completed, was the story is so crucial, right? And this is one of the reasons why I'm doing this presentation, is to tell you a story. The story is critical because it brings people on board. They know what they're doing, they know what they're getting into. And I find that being able to tell a really good story can bring people along that journey. All right, so that comes to the end of my session of how reinventing to stay relevant led to being an agile great place to work. Thank you all for your time and attention. And I hand it over to TJ.